Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
And greetings. Thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, I am so happy to have with us a person right here, is available right here on Long Island in our area, and that is Dr. Gary DeBrandt. Dr. DeBrandt has a long list of qualifications. He is a chiropractor as well as a certified New York State nutritionist, licensed clinical social worker, certified traditional naturopath. He has a diplomat of the Shanghai Research Institute of Acupuncture and a diplomat of the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine and the American Chiropractic Board of Nutrition. Dr. Brandt, welcome to Herbally Yours.
Hi, Ellen. So good to be with you.
Now, it sounds like you have an addiction here, Dr. Brandt. You have an addiction to degrees and certificates. What is it that really excites you enough to go after all this additional training besides being a doctor of chiropractic?
Well, you're right. I am kind of addicted to learning and to acquiring new knowledge, and certainly in the field of health, it seems to me like things are just unfolding more and more rapidly in terms of greater awareness and greater things to be learning to help ourselves. And for me, it's a very personal journey. I was quite ill as a child, and had type 2 diabetes when I was 9, and horrible asthma and psoriasis and things that should have really probably done me in. And I had to learn a lot of this stuff the hard way, from personally figuring out how to help myself survive and thrive.
That's interesting. I would say that's almost a rather common story, where we hear that people are motivated to learn more. And then the thing is, perhaps your parents took you to conventional medicine and it didn't help.
That is the truth. I don't think they honestly knew what to do with a kid with type 2 diabetes. Of course, it didn't help that my father was a Coca-Cola salesman, and I had all of the soda that I wanted to drink free at 5. And by the time I was 9, instead of attending, mentally at school, they didn't really have the term ADHD back then. But when I put my head down one day on a desk and they couldn't wake me up, they realized something else was there, and of course they took me to the hospital and to doctors, and I kept hearing the word diabetes, and no one understood that there was a real connection at that point between the amount of sugar that I was intaking and the fact that I had created a kind of a early pathway to this disease. So, yeah, they didn't know any better back then. There just really weren't alternatives. Although they did take me to a chiropractor, and in fact, that really made a significant difference because I had a fairly bad scoliosis, and it would have put me into either a brace or a Harrington rod, a steel rod in my spine at an early age, and that never happened. So they did, look at what alternatives were available at the time.
So fascinating that your father was we say soda here on the Northeast. Yeah. Some people call it pop or something. And he was a salesman, so he had unlimited access to it, and so did you. Wow, that's a fascinating historical tidbit. Thank you for sharing it. Now, in addition, you also, early on and even now, I think, are really at the top of your game in terms of integrating and truly understanding words that are thrown around called the body-mind connection, because you are also a licensed clinical social worker.
Yeah, I have never, either oddly or not, lost sight of the fact that this is a journey that we're all on together, and it's not a thing of have this symptom and fix this symptom, which unfortunately is too much of what I think we all recognize conventional medicine does. But I rather look at the underpinnings. What is it that's either psychologically or spiritually or somehow in a fuller sense affecting a person so that they might be expressing discord, disharmony, dis-ease in some way? And for me, that's always been a journey of holism rather than reductionism, just looking at little parts.
Well, you certainly bring that all together with your many different aspects of learning and sharing. And you have been doing this quite a long time. I mean, I must know you probably close to 30 years that you've been in practice.
Yeah. There's old warrior syndrome going on here, I think, for us. We've been around for a long time doing this because it is passion for me. It's not driven out of other particular reasons. I care about helping people on their journey towards greater well-being and health. That's why I use the tagline, infinite wellness, because for me, that's the goal, is to help people reach wellness, not avoid disease. And those are different strategies and there are different philosophies, so it takes me down a different road with people. And for me, that exploration is pure gold. It's the stuff that makes me happy, and I go to bed sleeping well at night because I know I've helped people in a different way.
So you've brought together so many different techniques, and I'm sure with each individual, the protocol is probably not cookie cutter, but you're drawing from your vast array of knowledge for each person.
That's the idea. Each individual is their own set of symptoms, if you want to look at it in the Western approach, or they're their own set of possible solutions and possible ways to help heal themselves. And I'm a real firm believer in the fact that we know internally what it is that we need to do. We may not have the means to access it. We may not know the skill sets to do that. But my job is to help people reach their potential rather than find out why, where they're falling down, because Western society does that for us in so many different ways, lets us know the places we're not working well. I want to help people reach their maximum potential. And that doesn't matter whether it's a child with obesity at 2, or if it's somebody in stage 4 cancer, end-stage cancer. The idea is to help them reach the best that they can be at any given moment in their lives. And I believe that. I think that's really the goal of health, not just the reduction of symptoms.
Well, I'd like to remind you, listeners, that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, and today my guest is Dr. Gary DeBrandt. Dr. DeBrandt has offices in Glen Cove, New York, and in Manhattan. And you can find him online at drdebrandt.com. That's DRDBRANT.com, where you can see lots of information that he's also sharing with us today. Now, Dr. DeBrandt, you wanted to share with the audience some information about one aspect of the many different kinds of healing that you're involved with, and you wanted to talk about detoxification. Why did you choose detoxification as a focus topic when you have such a vast array of knowledge?
It's a good question. For me, detoxification is really kind of at the crux point right now more than any other time, and I think it's a reflection of the fact that we're living in the most toxic times of our history. There's just so many avenues of toxicity that we're being exposed to and or generating that looking again at individual symptoms in some ways is like a dog trying to chase its tail. You can go round and round and round. But if you want to look at a systematic way to help the body function better, whole body detoxification is an answer that I think has not let me down in all the years that I've been doing it with people. And that's like over 30, and including myself, then it's over 40 to 50, because that's how I got myself out of some of the dilemmas, health dilemmas that I had earlier on.
Yes, so it's a really good place to start. And what I find both clinically and as I discuss in many of my books, such as Arthritis, the Alternative Medicine Definitive Guide, and of course that's about inflammation, is that really it is totally necessary if you want to turn around any kind of long-term illness.
Yeah, it's at a foundational point in rehabilitating ourselves. And even if you weren't thinking of it directly in terms of an illness, although I absolutely support what you said about arthritis in terms of looking at it from a detoxification model. The idea is to never go down those roads in terms of those diseases. And if you are suffering from either early stage kinds of things like that, or pain syndromes, or bloating, or gas, or whatever it is that you're suffering from, detoxification has something to offer you. But it's really important to recognize that it's not, people get confused with the term detoxification. It's not alcohol detoxification. It's not drug detoxification. We're talking about, I think we're talking about whole body detoxification, aiding the body in its ability to do what it was set out in conception. I mean, we have a wonderful body. It's an elegant system in it to detoxify ourselves. It just needs help.
Right. Well, first you have to recognize that you need that kind of help. Absolutely. So what does detoxification mean exactly?
Well, for me, it means recognizing that the body has a capability to detoxify itself, but it often gets overwhelmed in the process of doing that. And so we want to aid that process. And when we do that, we're putting a metabolic burden on the body. We're asking the body to work harder. So if you think about it, you want to clean your living room, and you look and just say, this is really dirty, it needs a good cleaning. You don't just vacuum up around things. You'll move the furniture out from the walls, and you'll vacuum around that. You'll clean all the surfaces. While you're doing that, you're stirring up a lot of the dust and the dirt that was there, the dust mites and everything else. And you want to work hard to clean that up. Essentially, when we're talking about detoxification, we're saying the same thing. We're going to basically activate the body's ability to detoxify. We're going to aid it, but we're going to need extra help in doing that because we're asking the body to work harder.
So that's why you do it, in a step-by-step manner. Because also it can tend to throw some toxins that your body wants to get rid of out during the process. Now, the body does have the capacity to detoxify itself. That's why we have all those liver enzymes in place naturally.
Absolutely. As I said, I think it's a remarkable structure we've got here, a remarkable system we've got. The liver, the colon, the kidneys, some people include the skin as the primary detoxification organs in the body. But I think it's really important for people to realize that every organ and every gland has the capacity to detoxify. It isn't just one that's doing it. Everything does it. The liver perhaps does the burden of it. I think I've seen estimates of 60% of the total body detoxification happens there. So that's obviously a place to focus on the most, but the smallest part of us is still trying really nobly and intensely to help us clean and stay clean, because that's part of what the body's function is to do.
That's excellent. Well, I wanted to take a little break right here, Dr. DeBrand, and when we come back, we will continue our discussion. And listeners, I'd like to remind you that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live online at nccradio.org or on iHeartRadio. We get so many calls and emails from people who have listened all over the country on iHeart. That's quite exciting. And for more information about today's guest or topic, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. Stay tuned. Herbally Yours will be right back.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
welcome back to more right here on Herbally Yours. Thank you for joining us. This is Ellen Kamai at naturalnurse.com, and our guest today is Dr. Gary DeBrant. You can find him at drdbrant, BRANT.com, and you can always listen to our show on our archives if you heard a little bit or you want your friend to tune in. And Dr. DeBrant has offices in Glen Cove and Manhattan, so he is a local person, and we're so happy to have as our guest today. We are talking about detoxification, so we will continue with that discussion, Dr. DeBrant. How would somebody get a clue that they may need to detoxify?
Well, our bodies are always different and changing, so it's listening to our bodies, which is the first thing. And that may seem like a kind of sort of obvious thing, but it isn't in my experience. We're doing so many things that sort of dull us down, and we're not listening to the symphony that's playing in the background. So you might look and want to say, how are my bowel habits? Are they changing? Am I constipated? Do I have a little looseness? Am I bloating after my meals? Am I tired, unusually so? Am I suffering from headaches or some sort of low-level pain pattern that has not been there before but is showing up now? Those are sort of the more obvious things. There's a lot of subtle things, though, too. You and I both have this experience, I'm sure, but you get people who are really reactive to things, like medicines or even nutritional supplements. They have very strong responses to things. They can't tolerate very much. They're kind of environmentally sensitive. Those are all signs that something is going on, and one of the surest places to look for a response to that is to think in terms of how to help the detoxification system.
So that's something that someone should consider rather than just, let's say, taking more and more and more pharmaceuticals. That is one of the problems. So many people are on polypharmacy because they get one symptom and they're given by their conventional physician a drug, and then that gives them other symptoms, even if it helps with the original one, and before you know it, you're on 4 or 5, and each of those cause stress on the detoxification organs.
Absolutely. Every time we add something into the mix like that, we're putting our bodies under more stress and under more burden. Last week, I literally had somebody come in, and when I did the history with them, they were on 11 medicines.
Oh, my God. But since you're a chiropractic physician, you can't actually legally tell them to stop their prescriptions. So where do you start?
I just ask them to look and tell me a little bit about what it is that's going on. And then I invite them, and it's always an invitation, to look at the possibility that there might be some natural means to help detoxify their body. And some of that can be a discussion with their medical professional about, do they need to be on all of those things, or can they be cut down on some of them as their symptoms begin to change? Now, it's really a conundrum because, as you just said, the polypharmacy concept really puts people into a lot of stress, and their organs and systems are really working overtime, and they often aren't up to it. So helping them detoxify then becomes kind of critical, but doing it in a very gentle way, using a variety of different techniques, some of which you wouldn't even necessarily think are about detoxification, but they are. So we start where we can start with each individual because it's an individual journey.
So what are some of the symptoms that you see people come in with that would tell you that, wow, a detox might be appropriate? Yeah, you mentioned one before. Arthritis is really one that I like to look at a lot from a detoxification standpoint. We tend to think of arthritis and we think of injuries and falls and all of that. I think of it as much more of a metabolic process and one that needs help from the inside out rather than the outside in. And even though I'll work with people, certainly with chiropractic in that regards, I like to work on many levels so that people are getting results quicker and more sustainable. But, I'll even go as far as saying I think the obesity epidemic that we have now isn't just about eating poor quality foods. That's certainly true for the standard American diet, but obesity
obesity in itself I think of as a toxic event, and I think it was Mark Hyman, I'm not sure, somebody coined the term diabesity, and I think it's a great term because it's the fusion of diabetes and obesity. And what we're seeing now more and more is symptoms like that, where there are comorbidity symptoms. Things are happening together in clusters and situations where you can really understand that this isn't just from one thing that's happening, and all you got to do is look at the greatest group that's the increase in obesity in the United States today, and it's children under 6 months. So we know it's not happening because they're asking moms to go out and take them to McDonald's. They're 6 months old. So it's happening because of toxicity in their bodies, and that's just one example. You can look at that across the board.
Well, that's certainly one that's obvious. Someone can know, and a lot of people feel that they're carrying too much weight, but there are sometimes very thin people that are having problems that you talk about, such as something that's called like fuzzy mind, where you know you're not thinking totally clearly, or you're tired all the time. Certainly fatigue is a big sign as well.
Absolutely true. Fatigue, that blurry kind of sensation, the feeling like we're not operating with all cylinders firing, the sense that there's more in the tank but we can't figure out a way to access it, or that sense that there's literally nothing in the tank and that we've exhausted everything and that we're sort of operating with fumes. Big ones also are digestive things. You want to look really carefully when a person's bowel habits have changed significantly. They're either all of a sudden very constipated, they're having to use more coffee or laxatives and things like that to get bowel movements to happen, or the opposite, where they're flipping between diarrhea or loose bowels and constipation, and they sort of don't have any stability in that place. Any reactions to foods where you're consistently burping or have gas or just feeling really bloated afterwards are all signs of toxic responses to the things that we're taking into our bodies.
And almost everybody has that once in a while, but it's more about, I imagine, if it becomes chronic.
Yes, absolutely. You want to look at it over a period of time. It's not just one event. I mean, we all go out and overindulge or do something at a particular time, but it's seeing themes that are beginning to show up. Even, you can look into behavioral changes like depression and anxiety and realize that there's some real connection here between becoming more toxic and having those states be more chronic, and variable mood swings, and people who are really suffering from what would be called either bipolar syndrome or other kinds of mood affective disorders. A lot of that can be tracked down to the toxic burden in the body.
Well, I want our listeners to know that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, and today my guest is Dr. Gary DeBrant. You can find him at drdebrant.com. That's DRDBRANT.com, easy to remember. We're talking about detoxification, but Dr. Gary has knowledge in so many areas. So, what are some of the methods you would use or recommend, Dr. DeBrant, to your patients to begin to help that detoxification process?
Yeah, there's so many, and we're lucky to have the natural things that we have. There are herbs that are just wonderful in terms of detoxifying, some things that are really kind of common and people don't realize, and they think of it only in terms of the taste, and things like sage or thyme actually have quite strong detoxification properties. There are homeopathics, which are some of classic ones like Nux vomica, and sort of, if people are familiar with, they'll know that one because it's the hangover one that everybody knew about years ago. If you did something you shouldn't do, drank too much, you took Nux vomica the next day because it really relieved some of the toxic symptoms from that hangover. There's functional foods. I use a combination of most of these, but functional foods are particularly strong when they're shakes and foods that help the body function better. and function in this particular way. They help phases 1 and 2 of detoxification particularly. And then there's one of my favorites that people don't talk about very much, but I just think is such a great thing, and it makes you feel so good, and that's the use of far infrared saunas to help lymphatic drainage. We know that toxins come out of the sweat better than they come out of urine or just about anywhere else in the body. Sweating is one of the best ways to do it, and sweating has been around for as long as we've been here, but now you can get portable far infrared saunas or build a wood one. You just have to be careful about the materials used, because then you can potentially engaging in more things that bring toxicity in rather than taking it out.
Well, I just want to throw out here Naval Expo. That's NAVELEXPO, navalexpo.com, because that is a place you can find where Dr. DeBrandt presents, and I do too, usually a couple times a year. And why I'm bringing that up, Dr. Brandt, is you always bring your infrared sauna so people can actually try it.
Yeah, it's a big draw, because people think, oh, what is that? And then they sit in it and realize the heat is extremely wonderful, and it penetrates, when you're looking at far infrared, penetrates 2 to 4 inches inside the body. And what's inside the body at that level are your organs. So this activates and stimulates the lymphatic drainage capacity of your organs to do what they're intended to do, but simply aids it in doing that. And I could literally, if we had another half an hour, tell you the stories of what have happened when people have gotten their own saunas, and what they've told me has come out of their skin and onto towels and things that they've had wrapped around them. It's pretty phenomenal.
And it's very comfortable, and it's very inexpensive to even have in your home, and it doesn't take up much room. So it's really a special kind of thing, and it's great to try it first. That's why I guess you bring it to all the expos and lectures that you give.
Yeah, it's true. People line up because I want to sit in that, and it's really fun because you give people a really, a few minutes of really feeling what the potential for heat at that level in the body can do, because you can notice it within a very short amount of time. It's not just sitting in a warm room or a steam room. This is penetrating deeply into the body and having that very important drawing and stimulating lymphatic effect.
And also, we are getting towards the end of our time together. That's true, Dr. DeBrandt. But just throw out a comment about the fact that you also see patients as a licensed clinical social worker, and you do therapy on that level as well.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. This is a journey about helping people on many levels and realizing the integration of things. I started out as a social worker in my first professional career and realized right away there were physical things that were wrong with everybody who was coming in with emotional issues. And now as a doctor, I always remember the fact that nothing happens in the body that doesn't happen in the mind and the heart and soul. And so we want to respond to all of those levels, and certainly working with people in a therapeutic way helps people rid their bodies of some of the things through recognizing their body knows everything. We just have to listen to it.
So that's a beautiful coming together of so many different aspects of healing that you offer. And before we go, can you just let our listeners know the best way to get in touch with you?
I'm, as you mentioned, located in 2 spaces here in Glen Cove and also in Manhattan. The phone number is 516-609-0890 and at drdebrandt.com.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest today, and keep up all the good work. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in once again to another edition of Herbally Yours, which we produce right in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For more information, send us an email at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamai at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.